Call to order.
Mr. Gabriel.
Yes.
Dr. Perry.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan-Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Brady.
Yes.
All present.
Have a moment of silence. Thank you. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Dr. Fox, are there any agenda changes or additions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we do have one tonight. We're going to have the addition of an action item, 8.04, the naming of the football and track stadium at Page County High School. We just need to make a minor correction to that motion.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Make a motion that we approve the agenda as amended.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Who was the second? Mr. Painter? And Mr. Painter is the second.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Gabriel.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan-Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Brady.
Yes. And need a motion to certify personnel matters discussed in closed session.
I'd like to make a motion to certify the personnel matters discussed in closed section 2.23711A1.
Second?
I have a motion and a second.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Gabriel.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan-Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Brady.
Yes. And we're into the citizen comment period. Page County Public School Board welcomes citizen comment during regular meetings. School board members do not respond to public comment during a meeting. All comments should address a matter related to Page County Public Schools. The school board will not hear public comment that involves an individual student-related matter, the disclosure of which would violate the appropriate confidentiality requirements. The school board expects that each speaker be courteous, model for our students how one can respectfully agree or disagree with others' views. Speakers will address the comments to the entire school board and not to one individual board member, nor to a superintendent, a staff member, or the audience. Speakers will have 3 minutes to present their comments from the podium. Cassie Bailey. Miss Bailey, please state your full name and your full address.
Sure. My name's Cassie Bailey. I live at 985 Lazy River East Road in Luray.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. Some of you may not know me well as I've only been in the county for a short time, but I'm an employee, a parent to 2 PCPS students, and also the new PCEA president. I speak to you tonight as a person held fast to each of those roles. As acting president, I politely request the Page County School Board table the vote on the resolution to deny collective bargaining until there can be more vigorous discussion in open session and/or with PCEA members such as myself. I decided at the beginning of this year that my motto would be, seek first to understand, then to be understood. I was reminded of that quote during our new teacher orientation this year. In the spirit of that sentiment, I recognize that for your half as PCPS board members, there may be several areas of hesitation and tension when considering collective bargaining. That is reasonable, and I understand the gravity of that. For our half, we believe the best interest of both parties lies in employees and school board members forging a new working relationship in which we hold open dialogue to put what is words into black and white and then into action. This offers a solid foundation of expectations, policies, and procedures which is needed in PCPS. If you do approve the resolution to deny collective bargaining tonight, please know that we are still hopeful for a future change in that decision. To that end, I hope that you are willing to open your door and ear to us in the future. Even though this resolution on the docket is disappointing to see, I do believe that a positive working relationship is the path forward to a better outcome for both our employees and our students, including my own children. Thank you.
Thank you. Who? Pamela Lawson.
My name's Pamela Lawson, 2656 Fleaburg Road, Shenandoah, Virginia. I come today to ask about a policy. At first, I thought this policy was put in by Richmond, but I called the principal today, and it was a policy, I guess, that the board had approved last year on kids turning in their assignments. If they don't turn in their assignments, they still get 50%. I'm trying to understand how this policy works. I don't understand how, if you don't turn in your work, you still get a 50%. So if you had 20 assignments, you don't turn in 10, we've lowered the grading scale, we turn in 10, and we make a high B or a low B on them, we still pass the class with a high D or a low C. And I'm trying to understand how it works. I'm just kind of asking if you guys could revisit this policy, maybe explain it better to us how it works, because I know if my child was missing assignments, she'd have no phone, no job, no sports, no cosmetology. She'd be sitting in her bedroom with her bed, her textbook, paper, and a pencil. And she'd have plenty of time to do her work. So when my son was in school, he took Spanish. He passed it with a D. They wanted him to take Spanish 2. I said, if he retakes Spanish 1 and passes it with a decent grade. So I'm just trying to understand how lowering the bar is making our children more successful. Because if I don't go to work, I don't get half the pay that day. So if we could just revisit it and try to make our kids understand that doing these things, homework, things like that, is self-rewarding and pays off when they get a job in the real world, because this won't happen in the real world. So that's all I want to know, if you guys could just revisit that policy or explain it so I understand it better. Thank you.
Thank you. George Ticklehope. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. You're fine.
My name is George Tickerhoof. I reside at 184 Panther Drive, Shenandoah, Virginia. Good evening, members of the board. I am the PCA building representative for PCHS. I'm here to ask that you reconsider the resolution regarding the plan to deny collective bargaining this evening. It is no secret that all of us here care about students and their success. By allowing us to collectively bargain, you enhance the quality of our students' education by 1, educator negotiated contracts helping to recruit and retain the top-notch teachers our students deserve. 2, educators have used contract negotiations to secure smaller class sizes, thus increasing the one-on-one attention for all students from our professionals, and other options as well. I have learned through my graduate class in the recent weeks that when students are given a chance to have a say in development of policy, student learning improves, not decreases, it improves. And teachers feel more respected and valued. We are in the classroom all day, every day. We know what our students need. It is no secret that PCPS struggles to find teachers each year. By allowing us to collectively bargain with you, you give an incentive for new teachers to join the great team we already have here. Our students do not deserve the leftovers from the wave of applications across the valley. Our students deserve the very best teachers we can possibly have. We are not individuals just seeking more pay for ourselves or grandiose changes. Bargaining is about more than salary schedules. It also includes the working and learning conditions for all students and staff and clear guidelines. We are professionals seeking the ability to negotiate for the benefit of every student in Page County Public Schools. The whereas statements currently in the resolution are the essence of what we want, just in writing rather than verbal promises. In closing, I ask that as you vote this evening on this resolution, that you vote in favor of giving us, PCPS employees, a chance to collectively bargain with you and Division Administration to pave a path forward for the benefit of every student who enters our schools this year and in coming years. Or at the very least, give us more time to discuss this resolution in an open forum before action is taken. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The written ones. All right. Okay, Chris and Stanley, Virginia. Good evening. Starting off the school year, we dealt with transportation problems and food problems of the first 2 weeks of school. While the headaches of these first 2 weeks are over, it does sound like finally we are getting back to a bit of normality with the school schedule in both regards. I do recommend that the schools next year not start on the same week as the fair, though, as many problems were related to it. Example, short staff and half days and transportation needs. My complaint, however, is in regards to the school board member who brought up her statement on the ability to do her job and that she only gets paid so much money to handle it, and then blame parents for going to the media. First, before you make accusations and put the blame on the parents, make sure you have all the facts and known possibilities. For example, I was approached by the media about the transportation problem. I did not go to them. They came to me, and I gave them my opinion on what happened with my kids the first week. Second, you're in an elected role. You're expected to be professional enough to accept all complaints when it comes from the parents, the kids, the media, etc., as long as they are not discriminatory or scream profanity, etc. But if you cannot handle this ability as required in your position, then you're expected to submit your resignation to allow a person who has such ability to do so. However, at the moment, at the very least, I ask for an apology to be made. There was nothing criminal or harassing about voicing concerns, either directly or indirectly toward the school system. This is our right as county residents. Remember, you're in an elected position, and your position is based off our choice as residents. You're not required to be in the position you're in, but you're expected to maintain a higher level of professionalism in the job you perform. You're also in a political position and not a contractual employment. In conclusion, I ask for a decision to be made. Either agree to this or you can immediately submit your resignation. It's as simple as that. Same can be said of any other board member on this council. You cannot live up to these expectations set by our community, then you do not belong in such position. Thank you for your time, and I apologize that I cannot make the meeting in person, but appreciate the time and comment. Patty Davis Lucas, 1212 Mount Carmel Road, Luray. Has anyone done a carbon monoxide level test on kids after they've had a mask on for 5 minutes? What level does that meter reach after an hour? Would you shut your garage door after you start your car and let it run all day? Are we doing more harm than good? I would like to request that this simple test be done by the school. It would only take seconds to realize the danger of masking our kids and the staff of our schools. Please consider making mask a choice of each individual, even if we have to sign a waiver to void the school of any responsibility. Parents can't hold the school accountable if their kids get sick from not wearing a mask. The schools can be held accountable if our kids get sick from following a mandate, if they get staph, bacterial pneumonia, or worse. Has anyone researched the real cause of why so many people died during the Spanish flu? In 1918, the Spanish flu wasn't the cause of millions dying. They actually died from the vaccines that were convinced to take and wearing the mask that caused bacterial pneumonia. The mask actually caused a viral load to concentrate in the nose and lung area, causing the bacterial load to intensify. Wearing a mask pulls the immune system down by 30%, not to mention the mental effects from breathing carbon monoxide. Masks are demoralizing. What are we teaching our kids and what effect is going to have in the future? We need to be teaching our kids to be strong and to stand up for their rights, not to be fearful. Fear is what they use in Germany to convince everyone to get on the trains. Are we going to get on the train if it comes? Considering how many times you adjust the mask, you're putting more germs up to your face that they lay on the mask for you to breathe in, which only increases the viral load in your system. Wearing masks at school makes little sense, especially when this is the only place anyone wears them now. The virus will always exist. The common cold and flu is a COVID virus. Fear is control. Is this really about health? The virus is a 99.7% survival rate. Please give our kids back their ability to smile and express themselves. They've already had over a year and a half of their lives being turned upside down. As adults, we are able to hand this a little easier, but to them, this is changing who they are. Jess Meyer, 109 Reservoir Avenue, Luray. My child is suffering in school because she has a serious health condition and cannot breathe. She struggles to breathe often without her face being covered. After passing out due to respiratory distress and regaining consciousness, she tried to collect herself and go to class. The teacher got in her face in the hallway and told her that if her father does not survive his open heart surgery, it's because she took her mask down while in acute respiratory distress. No one helped her and no one informed me. That teacher allows other students to have their noses out, but now scapegoats my child and sends her out of the class as a disciplinary issue for lowering her mask. An administrator told me she has to cover her face or be excluded from school. This violates the governor's order in Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. There have to be reasonable accommodations and inclusion. M. Jordan Co., Lisa Lane, Shenandoah. Gifted plan, as stated, still does not appear to accommodate disabled students, and this is something that needs to be continually evaluated. The board/district should be able to answer community questions about the thresholds are for keeping schools open or closing them. This isn't from the perspective of shut down schools right now, but rather so that parents can plan if they see this possibility occurring. There are multiple parents, guardians who would appreciate this information for planning purposes, and I suspect that the district is trying to see if they can skate through September. Again, how many students, staff, etc. are required? I do want to thank administration for condensing the daily letters into one post. That has been helpful. Collective bargaining, to my immediate knowledge, there was no discussion of this at the last minute. So there's been no public input on whether an agreement resolution should come into play. This is yet another instance of the board doing things without discussion. As noticed in prior meetings where the board has acted as if item has been passed when it is yet to be motioned or discussed, like characters, not word limits on type comments. To my knowledge, there is yet to be an update from the attorneys as how to handle the transgender law about bathrooms, how the board is choosing not to implement the policy. When will this update arrive about whether the board/district will follow the law and guidelines on this matter? Next month to revisit? Edgenuity. The platform itself and the depth/breadth of trying to cover education is probably pretty decent. However, on the Chromebooks, it's nearly impossible to see the learning screen because the height of the tablet screens is so small. It is affecting learners. The requirement to print worksheets to scan back in was not part of the contract parents and guardians had to sign for their learners. Printers weren't required. Are there workbooks? While Cami is nice enough and can help with marking things up, especially at the K2 level, the learning partner is not simply supporting the student, but having to do all the work for the learner. While some students need that accommodation, others are not able to work independently because the motor control, trying to navigate multiple invisible scroll bars, is creating issues. Lastly, virtual IEP students and related services. When will these be set up virtually? Timeline, please. Thank you again.
That's the last.
That's it.
I do need to make a comment to address to the citizen comment period. On the form that is online that is sent out before every board meeting, there's going to be a slight change. because as we have someone come before us, they state their full name and address. They're not doing that online. So now it's going to be required fields for first name, last name, street address, town, and then a way to contact them back. Because there have been some that has submitted some concerns, and the school system will need to contact someone back to follow up. So those changes will be made to the form online, instead of just saying name and address and you put in whatever. We have to have some way of knowing who you are and who to contact back. So that change will happen for the next meeting. We read all comments that were submitted to us without a full name and full address, but we won't do that moving forward. So please comply with that request to submit your comments. We'll move on to the next item. Approval for minutes for July. I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the minutes for July 2021.
Second.
Well, who wants to do the second?
I did.
Okay. Have Mrs. Smoot with the motion and Mr. Painter with the second.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Gubler.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smoot.
Yes.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes. The next item is information item for the August. Just remind the board to review those for our next meeting as they will be up for approval. We'll move into something, and I'll need to explain this, that is a new addition to our agenda. It's called a consent agenda. Everything that's on the consent agenda has been brought to before the board before with discussion, and with the consent agenda, everything is presented at the same time. One vote, and everything in that would be approved. So the items on the consent agenda are the personnel actions taken in closed session, the VSBA policy updates AD and GAA, the 2021-2026 gifted plan, and approval of the religious exemptions that were made to the school system.
Could you note that they were for schooling, not for math?
They are for schooling. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda items as presented, or not presented, I guess.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Gubler has made the second.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Gubler.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smoot.
Yes.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes.
Thank you.
Moving into informational items. Monthly financials. Ms. Sechrist?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. You all have been provided with the monthly financials for August, where the expenditures and revenue were $4,052,849.85. Along with that, you've been provided with the local match calculation on the screen. That was provided to the treasurer and balanced with them. If you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
On the revenue, the recovered costs, is that like from the CARES Acts and things, or?
So that is just our other revenue. It's not from CARES Act and that sort of thing. It's things like if we were charging for building use or that sort of thing. It's in our books, it's called other revenue, but it's just recovered costs things.
Have we had any reimbursement
From,
like from, I don't know, any of the CARES, any of the federal pandemic?
original CARES, yes. Not any reimbursement checks from ESSER 2.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Sechrist.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Next information item is crisis management plan update. Dr. Fox?
Yes, good evening. So each year we will bring before the board a crisis, emergency management and medical emergency response plan update to you. What I'm doing tonight is just giving you a preface to that update. We are reconvening our division safety committee with an updated roster of staff personnel. Obviously, we've had some changes, so we're assigning new staff to that roster. We will convene a meeting by October 1st of this year to review and update the current PCPS school crisis, emergency management, and medical emergency response plan. In October, we will bring that information to you. We'll share those updates and changes with you. It'll also include any updates to the school plans that may be needed. And then once approved by the school board, we will then share those revised plans as necessary with staff and present any required notifications that we need to give to staff, students, and parents. So just an update for you tonight on where we are in that process and that you can expect those revisions to come in October.
Any questions on that? Okay. Moving on to the next one, information item, opening of schools. Dr. Fox?
Yes, thank you. So this evening, I'd like to begin with the first slide is just to have a moment for us as we approach the 20th anniversary of 9/11. We would just like to take a moment to honor the victims and the first responders of that event. And we also want to take a moment to thank all of our first responders in Page County for their service that they provide to us. So if I would indulge the board to have just a quick moment of silence, please, for the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Thank you. As I have been doing each month for you, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of where we stand, and this may answer some of the questions that actually came up in public comment. So, as you're accustomed to seeing, this is the daily case rates for Virginia, and you can see that there was a little dip there, which was exciting to see, at least something going down. It's starting to trend back up, but we were excited to see a little dip there. The next slide shows again the state, and we're getting accustomed to seeing it, but there is also a little bit of good news that we now see some areas that are in substantial transmission rather than everybody being in the high transmission. And just as a reminder, as we move through this process again, that there are two variables that we look at, indicators in terms of determining the community transition. The first is the core indicator, or the total number of new cases per 100,000. We are, as a county, still in the high area with a rate of 456, and you can see that uptick there. If you look at the next indicator, that's the percent of positive PCR tests, and again, you can see that we did move into the high area at about 13% since our last meeting in August. And so that does put us in terms of community transmission. We are still considered to be in the area of high right now. When we evaluate the local and school level vaccination coverage, again, you're not going to see much change here. This is very similar to what we saw last month. There is a little bit of an uptick in some of the areas, but we said that we would present this information because it is a part of our entire community profile as we look at that. Across Page County, for the adult population, we have a vaccination rate of 46.9%. And then evaluating the school impact. I wanted to provide some information because we've had several questions about whether or not we were going to close school because of our high transmission rate in the community and because we are seeing some cases in the school. I just want to remind everybody that Senate Bill 1303 requires that schools offer in-person instruction to each student this school year. It is not an option for us this year to move to fully remote learning. Remember last year, school divisions could make decisions. Some chose to toggle between in-person, some did hybrid learning, some brought kids in, some didn't. That isn't an option for us right now unless something changes at the state level where they dictate that we move to fully remote learning. What option we do have is that we can sometimes close a classroom or a school if necessary to address the level of transition in a building when conditions necessitate it. And we will do that in collaboration with the local health department. We're required to do that. So if a classroom or a school closure does take place, it will only last for as long as it's necessary to address and ameliorate the level of transmission of the COVID-19 in that school building. So I just want everybody to know that that option is out there. We have not yet exercised that option. We are looking at data to develop some threshold points on when we would potentially go into a school closure. We do have some classrooms where a large percentage of the students have been quarantined, or all of the students in the class have been quarantined. So that would be considered a closure of that class. But we have not yet at this point closed any schools because of COVID. So the next slide, what I'm going to share with you, this is the beginning of this data trend that we're going to try to share. This is our COVID dashboard that is now up and running on our COVID webpage. It will be updated each morning, and we're in the process of adding more information to our COVID-19 website. Additional data we'll also be collecting is looking at the number of quarantined students and staff. Right now, what you're seeing on our dashboard is simply the number of cases that are presenting themselves, either in staff or in students. We're also going to look at the cases in a classroom versus extracurricular or athletic activities and provide that information. So what I'll say is, in terms of our data, it is growing, it's becoming more robust. It is quite a task to capture all of that data, but we do have staff that are working to track that data. The VDH and the CDC recommend that we look at the level of school impact, and that gives us the areas of low, medium, or high for the transmission within a school, for student absenteeism, and for staff capacity. Around the state, you've seen that there have been some school closures. Most of those have happened because of staff capacity. They've had too many staff out to be able to run the school, so they've had to close. They stay closed for anywhere from a few days to possibly a week, and then they open back up. So that's what that's referencing there in staff capacity. Now that we are tracking individual data for all of our schools, we're working through how we can make a determination for each school based on the information above. So we've got to determine what our thresholds are. Where is the point that we can't staff a building to be able to provide instruction? Where is the point that the absenteeism levels are too high? And we're coordinating with the Virginia Health Department and the Lord Fairfax Health Department to help us make some of those decisions, because it might be different for each school based on different factors. So ideally, what we hope to present to you all in the near future is a level of impact for each school, not just for us as a division. But I will say to you, we're not to that point yet. We have now 3 weeks worth of data, so we're getting closer to being able to look at where those thresholds might be. And then certainly this is involving conversations with our school nurses, who, by the way, have been absolutely critical to this process, as have been our administrators and teachers. And we just want to thank them all for their work. Our administrators and nurses are spending a large portion of their day doing contact tracing, unfortunately. But we just want to commend them on the work that they're doing in communicating that information out. We do have our COVID liaison. Mr. Pitts is working hard to get this data centralized for us. And just know that we are in constant communication with the Lord Fairfax Department of Health. In terms of understanding our community, we talked with you earlier this year that we would present enrollment numbers in terms of this. Right now, we do see a decrease, and again, we're still in the position right now where things are stabilizing. We are tracking some students down and confirming some attendance pieces. So we do hope in the next week or so that we will have a more definitive number in terms of where we are with relation to our budgeted ADM. But right now, we are showing that we're 66 students down from our budgeted ADM. And as we look, the last portion of the CDC and the VDH recommendations is when you look at your planning and your implementing of your prevention strategies. I want to focus on several of those tonight. Screening, testing, ventilation, cleaning and maintaining our facilities, staying home when sick, and contact tracing in combination with isolation and quarantine. And I just want to touch on COVID testing for a moment. I know this is a topic that some people are very nervous about. And what I want to share is that we are never going to ever test a student or a staff member without the parental consent or the staff member's consent. So when I talk through testing, please know that we're never going to force a test upon anybody. But by doing testing, we can identify infections early, and that helps to keep the transmission rates lower. And it keeps kids in school for participation in learning and in participation with extracurricular activities. We do not require testing, but it is recommended by the VDH. And testing in some cases can decrease the amount of time that a person or a student is quarantined. So following the VDH guidance, if a student or a staff member has been exposed or is symptomatic, PCPS will advise the parent or the staff member to consult with their healthcare provider. That healthcare provider may recommend testing. The VDH does recommend testing if the person is symptomatic or if a person has been exposed to someone who is positive. And that testing can also be elected to be done by a parent or a staff member without consultation of their doctor. So there's a variety of options for people if they want to get tested. We are looking and had a wonderful conversation this past week with staff from Valley Health and Page Memorial Hospital. They are now offering drive-through PCR COVID testing every day from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. We're going to push out information to all of our staff and our families either tomorrow or Monday. The only thing about their testing is it does require a doctor's order. So what they have done is that if someone is not affiliated with a physician's office with Valley Health or PMH, they have options for them to go and get a doctor's order from one of their facilities. So you don't have to be an established patient. There's an option for people to still get an order to go and have the testing done. It is PCR testing, which is what we want because that's the more accurate testing. And they do tell us they have a return rate of about 24 hours. So we're excited about that option because it's available to anyone in Page County. We are also exploring with the Virginia Department of Health and the Virginia Department of Education rapid testing, which would be on-site testing programs that our staff would administer. It's a short 15-minute rapid test, and it just gives us a preliminary positive or negative finding. Again, it would be with parental and staff consent. We would never test a student without their parents' consent. And I will say that it's not the totally invasive nasal swab. It's a less invasive type of nasal swab test. And what they are recommending is that most of the staff or the students are able to do it themselves. And then it's always an option for external testing through various drugstores and other medical practices in the area. So the reason we're bringing that up tonight is because one of the things that we had talked about earlier this year in our quarantining, the way VDH has it outlined is there's 14-day quarantine, there's a 10-day quarantine, and then there is an option for a 7-day quarantine. We wanted a way for there to be equitable testing for people at the 5 to 7 day testing window. In that window, if you get a PCR test and it's negative, it does allow you then to come out of your quarantine on day 8. So that increases the time that students can get into classrooms and increases the time that they can get back to participating in activities. We're going to encourage and begin a process. We're going to start communicating with administrators, nurses, and teachers and parents that we are going to allow and move to the 5 to 7 day testing window as long as it's a PCR test. And now that Valley Health has made that opportunity available, we feel like it's available now to anyone who can need it or access it in the community. So we will be communicating out information in the coming days about looking at that 5 to 7 day option as long as you're not symptomatic. If you are symptomatic at any one of those intervals, whether it's at the end of the day 7 or day 10 or day 14, you have to remain quarantined. So it does provide us with some additional options to get students back into class more quickly, but also be confident that they're not going to be transmitting the coronavirus when they do come back to class. We also want to share with you, in terms of ventilation, we are investigating the potential use of large use air purification systems for our cafeterias and other building spaces. Mr. Williams has a meeting with a vendor tomorrow morning to look at a device that was shown and shared with us from another school division that's using them. The only concern we have is about our common spaces and whether or not they can serve those areas simply because they're so open. But he's going to bring them to one of the high schools to look at the common spaces and see if we put multiple ones in that space, would it help purify that air? Given that that's a space where we have a large number of people at any one time, we think having some purification systems in there might help us. Cleaning and maintaining our healthy facilities. Last year, a process that was done in Page County was each weekend there was a deep cleaning process done in each of the buildings. We are resuming that. And likely that may begin as early as this weekend. We're just confirming a few details. And we want to thank our internal staff who have submitted their applications to be a part of that process. We couldn't do it without them. And we appreciate them being willing to do that each weekend. We also need to stress to people that if you're sick, we need you to stay home. We have had a number of students and staff who have come to school sick, and we just can't stress enough that how important it is that if you are sick, that you stay home. Even if it's something that ends up not being the coronavirus, if you're symptomatic and have a fever or other symptoms, you just need to stay home so that we can keep all of those things out of school. It's just going to help us keep more kids and more staff in school. And then contact tracing and quarantining. We talked about the 5 to 7 day option with testing, and then we are going to look at investigating leave options for staff who are required to quarantine or isolate by the division. Right now, sometimes staff may have to use their own leave because our FFCRA leave that was once, if you recall last year, there was the government Family Medical Leave Act that allowed for leave for COVID-19. That no longer is in place. So now if staff are quarantined, they essentially have to use their own leave if they can't perform their job duties while they're at home. For example, a teacher might still be well enough and can stream into a class and teach. A bus driver can't do that if they're quarantined because of a situation that we had to quarantine them for. So we're going to look into that option. I don't know yet what that means in terms of where we go with it and what we do, but I just wanted to let you all know that we're going to look at that to see what options we might have that would be feasible for us to provide that option to our staff should it be needed. And that is everything I have for you tonight in our update.
I have a question. The Valley Health testing, is there a cost to that?
No, it's free.
It's a free program. Okay.
The only thing they asked us to stress is that you do need that doctor's order. And again, if you're already affiliated with a practice, you can just call and get the order. If you're not, they've provided a list in Shenandoah and Stanley and in Luray, the doctor's office that you can call to get the order.
But it is free.
It is free.
And you can get that, I mean, that's just not for quarantined students, right?
No,
That's for anybody.
That's for anybody who is symptomatic or who's been exposed to somebody who tested positive. And it's 11 to 12. Is it Monday through Friday? I think. I'm trying to confirm for you. I believe it's only Monday through Friday, but let me make sure it's not on Saturdays and Sundays as well. And it is here at the hospital.
And that's offered to the teachers as well.
Yeah, anybody in Page County, so staff, students, parents, citizens, anybody. It's an open process. What it helped us do is ensure some equity so that anybody can now go and we can use that 5 to 7 day option.
It's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and Saturday, 9 to 1. Is what it tells you that you have to call first, is what it says.
Okay. They may have updated some things since we talked with them yesterday. They were still in process of moving through some of the details. So that's great if the hours are extended beyond 11 to 2.
Well, I want to thank you for doing that because last year I recommended doing it last year and I got the stiff arm. And to me, this is the way we can really get an idea of what's really happening. And I appreciate you reaching out to Valley Health and working that out. And whoever, Mr. Bell, whoever was doing that, I appreciate that.
No, we're really appreciative to them because we talked with them about, I guess, maybe a couple weeks ago, and then they reconnected with us and said they had this program in place and were gracious enough to share all the details with us. So we're just excited to have it as an opportunity.
And who was those doctors that spearheaded?
Dr. Schweitzer and Dr. Ben. Sorry.
Bite?
Nope. I'll get you the names and let
Dr.
you know.
Schweitzer, so
Dr. Schweitzer was there, and a gentleman with the first name of Ben.
Yep. Good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? We'll move into the next information item, Standards of Learning Test Results. Update, Mr. Benson.
Good evening, members of the board. We've gone ahead and placed the document at each of your seats here. So maybe if you would just locate that so we could follow along. We wanted to come back because recently the Virginia Department of Education provided some updates. And I think these are reminders that we wanted to be able to say publicly. So I think it's fair assessment for us to say that last year was like no other. And the SOL tests certainly reflect that. We don't want to be basing any life or death decisions based upon SOL results. The VDOE's been very clear that these SOL results, there won't be any waivers for the school year, and that the testing was canceled in the spring of 2020. So when we look at these comparisons, I think and start to look at some of the numbers, you need to remember that we shouldn't be comparing numbers from last year to previous years. The VDOE's been very clear about that as well. And that these scores from last spring really do establish a baseline for us. And I think we've been open about that. We've used these scores when we had students coming for summer school and as part of our recovery and remediation efforts that have been happening. The results that you are seeing at the different levels are the same numbers that we shared back with you at the beginning of June. So just to make sure, just to highlight some of those things, I think it's safe to say that English reading was the assessment that Page County students did fairly well with. There are other areas, as you can see on the chart, where students struggled quite a bit. At the high school level, I think we should point out that in some of these subject areas, you see there's very few students that are taking the tests. That's just a reminder for you as the school board. If a student doesn't need that verified credit for graduation, they are no longer required to take the test even though they are enrolled in the class. So that's a good sign because that means students are passing the SOLs that they needed for graduation prior to taking those classes. So when you look at your Algebra 2 numbers or you look at your chemistry numbers, you see fewer numbers of students taking assessments there. Last year we had 3 special advisory recovery committees. We had one at the elementary, middle, and high school level, and we had board members that participated in those committee meetings. And we do plan to reinstate those committees and get up and running again for this coming year. We've sent some invitations to different individuals to be a part of those efforts again. But as part of that work that happened last year when those committees were up and running, we took a pretty good look at master schedules for this coming year. And so you just have some notes there as to some of the possible changes or tweaks that occurred in master schedules so that we could begin to address the unfinished learning or learning loss that had occurred. So I just wanted to put those down as a reminder for you here this evening. In terms of accreditation, the accreditation based upon last year's testing results will not be calculated for the VDOE, and all schools will have the rating of accreditation waived as their accreditation status. I think the board should understand that we do still have 3 schools in school improvement, and we've listed those there. And we are working with the Virginia Department of Education to complete the necessary documents, and we are monitoring what's going on at each of those 3 locations. The next chart there that we've put on the document that you're looking at is just a historical perspective of where Page County's ranked in terms of SOL results. And although our scores were quite a bit lower last year, I think it's fair to say our state ranking didn't really change very much. In 2019, we were 89th in the state. Last year, we were 88th in the state. So we kind of went along with everybody else in the state and saw that same decrease in scores. When Dr. Fox and I sat down and the instructional team sat down and we just started to brainstorm a little bit about what were some of the factors or what were some of the things that happened that definitely influenced last year. And so I think we have to come back to, our situation and our scheduling. We certainly knew in-person instruction was a struggle for us at some of the different levels. So we certainly listed that. Of note, we did not give any expedited retakes last year. And for those of you that have been involved in SOL testing, you know that if a student scores 375 to 399, they're eligible for an expedited retake. And if they are able to score a passing score on that second attempt, the first failure is canceled and the school division and school are awarded as recorded as a pass. Last year, we did not have students taking expedited retakes, and in years past, that's been a way that I think we've seen a significant increase in our test results. As we started to think about that, we started to just come back to the message that we heard from the Virginia Department of Education, and that was, the test scores don't really count. Take care of the kids. Make sure the kids' well-being is your first priority. And so that does play into, the mentality of our students. It plays into the mentality of our teachers. And I think we do have to consider that when looking at some of this data. It was certainly a challenge last year just to have students in the seat. I don't think any of us don't want to take that for granted. So as we tried to just maintain our COVID protocols, and it was certainly a challenge to just test students alone. And then there were some other things that happened, I think, from the state that changed students' attitude and perspective a little bit. In order to think about graduation, in years past, we've awarded a locally verified credit, and the students were eligible if they were in that 375 to 399 range. The state lowered the bar for that, so in years past, we would have had students taking expedited retakes to try and either get a pass or get into that 375 to 399 range so that they could become eligible for that locally verified credit. And when the state lowered the bar, guess what? We had fewer students coming back and testing when that occurred. And then the last couple of bullets there, in some of these grade levels, we no longer have students taking SOL. The state has gone to a more performance-based assessment, where students are putting work together in some type of portfolio, and we're rubric scoring those things and determining mastery of the content in a different way than a SOL standardized test. So there are some SOL tests that have come out of the equation as well. And I think just so we know, our plan going forward from here is to do like what we said. We've used some of this data as a baseline. As we opened up the school year this year, students have begun taking VDOE student growth assessments. That's a new assessment that's being given, and we're also using that data to start to determine where students are at. And we will be using that to begin to put together a plan to try and increase student achievement across the school division. We will be meeting by level again for our special advisory recovery meetings and starting to look at that data and the tools that our teachers and students have at their fingertips. So tonight was just an opportunity, I think, to come back and revisit and reflect a little bit about where Page County stood and what happened last year. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have.
Any questions?
I have one. Mrs. Lawson, in this comment, she mentioned something about the 50% credit for doing nothing. When did we institute that? What year?
Last year.
Was it last year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that was because of the pandemic?
That was not necessarily because of the pandemic. That was a request of the superintendent. And when you mathematically, when you look at things, we had students that were trying to dig out, so to speak. And if you place a 0 there rather than a 50, mathematically there was a situation where students could never recover from that. So there was a change to the grade system at that time.
Are we going to review that and continue that, or what is?
That would be the decision of Dr. Pop.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly review it and take a look at it. There are pros and cons, both sides of that, but we certainly can have some discussions about it, of course.
Yeah, the intelligence you just gave me is the first I've heard I knew it was happening, but that's the first.
Yeah, I think we called it the no zero policy or something, but we all know too that the former superintendent, it was all what makes me look good on paper, so we didn't want anybody to fail.
Yeah.
So I mean, I wouldn't mind if it came up again because, we had the kids in front of us again,
Yeah.
so.
Understand.
But my understanding was it's just for homework that was turned in. It wasn't for everything.
Well, I think they're using it for everything.
They're using it for everything?
Yes, sir.
Oh, no.
We were instructed to use it for everything.
No, I could see for homework, but I can't see it for everything. Okay.
So I would respectfully request that we revisit that in the future.
I concur with that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Benson?
Yeah, I guess detention, I like, maybe we can talk about it maybe the next meeting. But when we look at the rankings and the pass rates are pretty close, but the rankings, have really changed, say, from 13 to 14, 49 to 80, yet the pass rate is not that much different. It just could be other
With other factors.
competitions with us, right?
There could be new standards that were introduced or new assessments at that time. There could be some re-benchmarking by the state. It really does require a historical to know kind of what was going on.
Yeah.
I can honestly say to you, we put out a reminder today for science. Right now, science is in a crosswalk year where they're teaching 2010 standards and 2018 standards, and there will be a mix of both of those sets of questions on this year's assessment. So there's certain things that happen like that along in the historical perspective. So sometimes you do have to go back and think about what was happening that year
Yeah.
in terms of the assessments or what was going on with the standards.
Yeah, that would be very interesting to understand that when you look at these numbers, for sure. I have.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Benson.
All right, thank you.
Moving into action items, approval claims for payment, Ms. Sechrist.
Good evening again, members of the board. You all have been provided with the claim certification where the operating fund is $137,675.55. Food service fund, $24,928.54. Total expenditures, $162,604.09. Along with that, you've also been given the list of claims as well as the check registers, and I will do my best to answer any questions you have.
I make a motion that we approve the claims for payment as presented by Ms. Sechrist.
Tommy.
Wait a minute. All right, I have a motion from Dr. Painter. I have a second from
Tommy.
Mr. Lansbury.
Mr. Gabler.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smoot.
Yes.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes. We have on the next item, purchase orders over 10,000. Ms. Sechrist.
Yes, board, we have one purchase order this evening for your approval over 10,000. It is for $30,159 out of local technology funds for power school maintenance and support.
Well, we gotta have that. I make a motion that we, approve the purchase order over 10,000 for Power School.
Second.
I have a motion from Dr. Painter and a second from Mr. Gubler.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Gabler.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smoot.
Yes.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes.
Motion.
Thank you.
We have action item for approval resolution collective bargaining. Ms. Breeden Wallace.
Page County School Board Resolution denying collective bargaining. Whereas the 2020 Virginia General Assembly amended Virginia Code 40.1-57.2 to repeal the prohibition against collective bargaining for employees of localities and school boards beginning May 1st, 2021. And whereas Virginia Code 40.1-57.2 as amended grants school boards the authority and complete discretion to engage in collective bargaining with certain school board employees. And whereas the supervision and management of its school division employees is an essential and indispensable exercise of the Page County School Board's constitutional authority pursuant to Article 8, Section 7 of the Constitution of Virginia, thus limiting the degree to which the Page County School Board can feasibly or effectively engage in collective bargaining pursuant to Virginia Code 40.1-57.2, and whereas the Page County School Board remains committed to its educators and employees and ultimately to the education of its students, and whereas in order to effectively engage, encourage, and empower our students, the Page County School Board recognizes the importance of employee feedback, perspective, and input on school matters. And whereas the Page County School Board acknowledges and appreciates the superintendent's efforts to work collaboratively with school board employees and the Page County Education Association, and further commits itself to remaining open and receptive to employees and PCEA concerns. And whereas the Page County School Board directs the superintendent to develop additional methods to obtain feedback, create opportunities for participation, and create open lines of communication to encourage employees and PCA input on school matters. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Page County School Board that the foregoing recitals be incorporated herein as a material part of this resolution, and be it further resolved that the Page County School Board, exercising its authority and discretion pursuant to Virginia Code 40.1-57.2 and Article 8, Section 7 of the Constitution of Virginia, will not recognize any labor union or any other association as a bargaining agent of any public officers or employees, and will not collectively bargain or enter into any collective bargaining contract with any such union or association or its agents with respect to any matter relating to them or their employment or service.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the Page County School Board resolution denying collective bargaining.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion, but I'd like to have a discussion time.
Yeah, we're up for debate. Yep. We have a motion and a second. Go ahead.
All right, so Mrs. Bailey, it's good to put a name with a face. We listened last year. I met with Mrs. Meadows personally, and we pushed for a raise and to straighten things out. So we listened, and I would love to meet with your group personally, and I would like for all of us to meet with you. And I realize that management is from Tom Peters gets the union that they deserve. And if we've been bad managers, I understand some feelings on that, but we listened and we passed teacher raises. And I'm a business guy that worked with unions. I'm 100% against unions unless it's a bad situation. But I want to meet with you. I want to meet with your group and understand things better. And I would certainly hope Dr. Fox is meeting with you. And if we're not addressing things, please let us know. We may not be able to fix everything, but I want to listen. I want to hear what you have to say. But I'm going to vote to approve this. That's all I have to say. Please invite us.
I think it should be known that, when you tie yourself to allowing a union, our pot of money that we get from is only so big, so we could end up with a big pile of, if we allowed this to happen and they demanded things that we couldn't give because our hands are tied. We don't have our own money trees.
But we had the money was there last year, and we said, this is a top priority for us.
Yeah.
And we did it.
And we're still working to fix some.
And still working to fix it. And other folks didn't get that rate, get those fixes in the steps. And if some of those steps are still not correct, let us know. I think we need to know those things and try to address them the best we can. So we're an open year, but for this,
Are classified people part of PCEA? Are they a part of that too?
They can be.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
And, Mr. Chairman and the board, I would like to address, because it does direct me to develop additional methods to obtain feedback, and create opportunities for participation and create open lines of communication. One of the things that we have done is we've realigned all of the superintendent's meeting groups. We do have a teacher advisory council, and that will be just for teachers and instructional aides. I'll meet with them, hear their things. There'll be representatives from each building just to share their concerns with me. We're also going to have a staff advisory council that will meet with me. That's going to be made up more of our classified staff so that they can have an opportunity to bring their concerns to the table. Going to have a student advisory council, and we're also going to have a parents advisory council. And Miss Bailey and I are meeting quarterly, and we'll certainly talk through other things. There might be some ad hoc types of committees that we might need to form just to get to address some of the issues that might arise out of these committees. So just know that those things are already underway. We will begin meeting with some of those committees in October.
and Dr. Fox, I'd just like to ask a question. So, if they feel frustrated with you, are you okay with them coming to talk to us, or do you want it all your direction?
I hope that no one is frustrated with me that they feel they have to come to you, but I think, you're my employer. That may make sense that that's the next level where they would go if they were frustrated with me in the decisions that I was making. I would hope they would give me an opportunity to have a conversation with them to talk it through, but I certainly understand that not everybody's always going to agree with the decisions that I make. So that would be, to me, the next appropriate step, and then you all can have that conversation with me.
And you're okay with us meeting with them as a group?
Sure, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay.
I mean, I think their voices need to be heard in as many capacities as possible. What I would ask is that if they bring concerns, that you let me know about them so that I can help address them.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to, if we're going to be invited to a meeting, that you invite all of us, but including Dr. Fox.
Yeah, and for that to happen, for the board to participate, it has to be a special called meeting.
If
And
there's more than two, right?
Yeah.
yeah, and so I have no problem calling one. We just had to have adequate notice because it would be considered a board meeting. And when we do a special called meeting, it's only the topic that we call the meeting for that we can discuss anything for. So just know that when we go to call it, that it can't be on 5 different things. It has to be on what we call it for.
Okay, and so how would that request happen?
She can make it with the superintendent, or she can make it directly to me, and then I'll pass it on to the board when we pick a time that all of us can convene.
We want you to have good management, for sure. Yeah, we're open to it.
I would just like to add in going forward. I don't think there's any doubt that in the past, being able to share concerns or whatever has not always been in a welcoming way. I truly believe from here on, as a board, that's one thing we really want to happen for communication to be able to come. We're not miracle workers. We can't make everything happen. But sometimes just talking about it and maybe coming up with a different solution or a different direction or whatever, it's important to hear from everybody that's got a concern or whatever. But at the same time, realizing some things have to be put aside and put our priorities in place and so forth. But I too, would very much enjoy sitting down and hearing you out.
The thing that I want to add is, albeit that we would love to do more, the unfortunate piece is we're not a taxing body. We have no way of getting income in, which is revenue. So we can't really negotiate salaries and whatever. The best thing we can do is try to fix the salary scales that we have and then go to the county through the budget process and ask for money that way. because that's our funding source is through the Board of Supervisors. So if we were a tax authority, like it is in some other states, I could see where we could enter into bargaining, but our hands are tied. We're given the money that we're given, and we have to meet certain obligations by the state and federal government. So we're going to do everything as a board, and the superintendent will certainly make sure it will happen. That's in our purview that we will be able to do. We do want Page County Public Schools to be the place to work and the place to have your kids educated. This board is dedicated to that, and we'll see that through.
But I certainly don't think that we've got the leftovers that was referenced. I think we have some really good teachers.
I believe that as well. So, okay, we have a motion and a second.
Mr. Painter,
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Gubler,
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smoot.
Yes.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes.
Motion.
Okay, the next item is 8.04, approval for, that's a correction to what we did last time. It's for Buddy Comer Stadium.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make an amendment to that motion that was made at our last meeting in the naming of the football stadium at Page County High School to the Buddy Comer Football Stadium. Is that right?
Buddy Comer Stadium.
Buddy Comer Stadium.
Okay, we have a motion for Buddy Comer Stadium. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second by Mr. Lansbury.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Gubler,
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smoot.
Yes.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes. Okay, the next item is board members' discussion time.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to read a thank you note. It says to the Page County School Board, "We appreciate your providing the school bus and driver for Stuff the Bus. It was a great success. Collected over 20,000 items. Sincerely, Page 1, Lois Schaefer." And it also says the bus driver was great. So, thanks for that. And then one other, I would like for everyone to keep in your thoughts and prayers a former school board member, Mr. Larry False, and is currently a member of the Page County Board of Supervisors. He has been taken ill, and I'm not sure if he's in Nova Hospital up in Fairfax or at UVA, but he had to have surgery, and he was having a pretty rough time. So please keep Larry and his family in your thoughts and prayers.
Any other board member?
Yep, sure. I was going to bring up that, that I thought that we should revisit the no zero policy, but thank you, Dwayne, for tackling that with Mr. Benson's presentation. And since it isn't appropriate to respond to public comments during the public comment period, I'd like to do that now, since the first comment was directed at me. Dear Chris and Stanley, I never brought up that I couldn't handle my job on the school board. You know nothing about me. I do more before you wake up than you probably do all day long. As far as the school board, I answer all emails or calls sent to me, even when they aren't in my school district. I simply pointed out that this is not a job that allows us to pad our pocketbooks, so do not put words in my mouth. Secondly, I'm sorry that you missed the point regarding the poor school lunches in the news. I stated that I wholeheartedly agreed with the complaints. I also said that instead of shaming our county by sending negative news to the media, we need to be building our school system up. To me, your argument sounded more like a guilty conscience. You asked that I apologize for my rant. That won't be happening. I have nothing to apologize for. You said it is our right to comment. Well, it's my right to. Everyone that truly knows me knows that I will do what is best for kids, and also knows I will not hide behind a keyboard. I sugarcoat nothing, and there's nothing I won't say if it needs to be said. And if I were to send a letter or an email to someone, I certainly wouldn't be vague with just signing my first name. Finally, you said in your comment, I asked for a decision to be made. Either agree to this or you can immediately submit your resignation. It's as simple as that. Submit my resignation? You wish. Again, why don't you go run for school board seat instead of pointing fingers? That's all I got.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, I got a couple things. First off, thank you, Mrs. Lawson, for coming and talking about that. And Mrs. Bailey, thank you for coming. Testing, Dr. Fox, I mentioned it a while ago. It's, I'm great. I'm happy to hear this and see this. I hope parents take advantage of it. I think it's very important to know what we have. I think we're putting a lot of students out on quarantine that may not be infected. It's good to know that information. I know of a case that someone was in a group for only an hour's time, but they were exposed to a lot of folks, and no one got it. And that was just a month ago. Just coming back from a vacation. I encouraged parents to get a test because, one, you can get your child back in school quicker, and secondly, you have immunity if you are tested positive, and you can avoid more time out. Air quality, the parent mentioned that. The thing I have on the desk here is a confined space air quality monitor. I've tried this. A video was sent to me. We use them on job sites, also use them in a plant atmosphere when we get cleaned out acid tanks. What happens is this thing stays out, and as long as the air quality is good, it doesn't go off. As soon as it goes bad, it goes off, and we clear areas and we shut down sites with it. I've taken it and I've put it underneath my mask, and it goes off just like that. Tomorrow I'm going to be down at the office, and I want to try it again with the face shield to see how quickly it goes off, because there is a danger with these masks. We're not getting the quality air that we should be. Mr. Williams, thanks for looking into the filters. I think that's the way we got to really go. To even before this, we should have been doing this kind of thing to do that. I encourage family to keep their child home, and staff as well if they're sick, not feeling well. 911, thank you for that moment of silence, and also let's continue to pray healing for our nation, particularly those who have fought in wars. I know of one guy who has 6 buddies that committed suicide that he served with because of that one incident. Have a new student that reached out to me, and he's talked about a new student came from another school system, and he's talked about how Mr. and Mrs. Brumfield have taken him under his wings, got him involved, and I appreciate both of them so much. I think y'all know my feelings about Mrs. Brumfield. I think she saves 20 kids at least every year, in the way she did things. 1986, I graduated. We're going to have a reunion at 35 years down at the lake this weekend. Looking forward to that. Was at a ball game last week, and Little Panther Pride, there's 17 state championships up on that wall. 17. Mr. Comer, I'm glad to see that the stadium or the area will be named after him. When he passed away, one of the students came up to me and told me a story about Coach Comer. And he talked about how they were at a track meet, and they were getting ready to get set to run the race. And it was a beautiful day that day, and there were some white clouds and blue skies. And Mr. Comer, before the race, he looked up and he said, "Look at that sky, kids. God must be a panther." Those are the kind of things that warm my heart to know that that field's going to be named after him. We're honoring him. That's all I have.
Anyone else?
Yeah. So I'd like to read a excerpt from the CDC's COVID-19 status report for Page County that came out today. So COVID cases in Page County have increased recently and are extremely high. The number of hospitalized COVID patients have also risen in Page County, in the Page County area. It says deaths have remained about the same. Test positivity rates in Page County is also very high, suggesting that cases are being significantly undercounted. So, as such, please consider having your teenagers and your athletes vaccinated. COVID generally, especially in pediatric cases, is brought from the home or from the community to the school. So if you're a community member and your parent, please consider getting vaccinated. Page County is about 18% lower than the state average for fully vaccinated adults. So let's try to get a handle on this pandemic. Thank you.
You got any? Okay. I just have two. One is it goes back to the collective bargaining thing. Please understand for faculty and staff that we want your involvement. We want your thoughts and your opinions. We can only make Page County Public Schools the best schools with you and with your input. It's one of the reasons why I got on the board. It's because I saw a great need. And I know every member here is working towards that. We want the students here in our county to have the best education and have the best teachers. But we all must work together, not only with faculty and staff, but also with the community at large. And with everyone's help, we can make Page County Public Schools the best in the state and the best in the nation. So we just all have to work together. We have a new superintendent. She brings a lot of nice new ideas. She's very collaborative. She's willing to work through everything. So at any point that a staff member, faculty member, or student doesn't feel like they're part of the process, please reach out to either to the superintendent or to one of the board members. Our email addresses are up on the division website. We're easy to reach. We all get your emails. I personally read them and I will respond back. So reach out. The other thing I want to remind people is our next school board meeting will be held at the central office. September 23rd is our next date. Our one in October will be at Luray High School in the auditorium. So just reminding you that it's one out of school, one back at the central office, and then back at the school again. Okay, and Miss.
Forgot one thing. On Sunday, September the 19th, weather permitting, at the Rec League Softball and Baseball Park in Shenandoah, the town of Shenandoah will be recognizing a graduate of Page County High School, Kate Gordon. And on September the 20th, Shenandoah will declare Kate Gordon Day. And so everyone is invited, and there will be, as I understand it, her coach from JMU is going to speak. Mr. Knight will be there. There will be other people there. And then if weather would not cooperate, we're going to meet out here in the Commons area, and the doors are open around 6:30. So if you are in the area on the 19th, come out and show your appreciation to Kate for all that she's accomplished and will continue to accomplish as she goes forward.
Thank you. Okay. Do you have a motion for adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Painter.
Mr. Goodler,
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury, Mr. Painter,
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smoot,
Yes.
Mr. Breed.
Yes.